So Fin essentially is a customer support agent that will answer customer support questions, much like a human customer support representative will.
Intercom will charge a client for successful AI conversations. Is that the commercial model?
We share a lot of detail on this because we've sort of changed our internal posture in the last 6 months to where we're going to share a lot more detail.
On the one hand, large language models are getting increasingly more competent and infinitely cheaper. So on the one hand, you think, well, all problems will be able to be solved by large language models. On the other hand, you think, well, is that just a sledgehammer to crack a nut? Like, do you really need to use that?
Modern AI really collides the two in a very deep way that I think a lot of people haven't realized yet.
Customers are not going to stop having issues and they're not going to stop asking questions, and therefore the ability to be able to respond to them at scale is something that's not going away.
I think Intercom has got some good DNA here.
The following is a conversation with Fergal Reid, who is the Chief AI Officer at Intercom. Intercom probably needs no introduction. It's a global organization powering customer support for thousands of businesses worldwide, has invested deeply in artificial intelligence, now views itself as an AI company fundamentally, and so its AI offering, Fin, is the subject of this conversation. We get into the details and into the weeds of what Fin is and how Intercom has approached its AI offering. Fergal literally opens the curtain on everything that's going on under the hood of Fin. We talk about retrieval augmented generation. We talk about the full pipeline and how they've optimized that pipeline to generate really great effective results. We talk about the commercial model that Intercom has, which is essentially you pay for the outcomes it generates, not for the input that you give it. We talk about Agentic AI and how Intercom is approaching that. It's a very transparent conversation. It's going to be very useful for anyone who's looking to use a tool like Intercom to build AI solutions, or even for your business if you're looking to build your own kind of AI capabilities. This is a conversation that gets right under the hood of what it takes to make that happen effectively. Without further ado, this is Fergal Reid of Intercom on VUX World. Fergal Reid, welcome to VUX World, my friend.
Thank you. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Nice for you to join me. I appreciate it. In Ireland as we speak, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. Dublin, Ireland. Yep.
Nice. Representing the Irish contingent of digital innovation, which is a booming industry right now over there.
Yeah, absolutely. Things are really moving here. We've got a lot of different companies just in Dublin, and it's really cool. Yeah, it's really exciting to see the Irish tech scene kind of moving on over time as well. It's great.
Nice. I didn't actually realize Intercom had a base over there. That's interesting.
We kind of have maybe 300-400 people here in Dublin. So yeah, been here for a long time. Yeah.
Nice. Interesting. And you've been at Intercom for a while. You've got a lot of experience in AI. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience and what you do at Intercom.
Background is I have degrees in computer science, maths, PhD in sort of machine learning applied to network analysis. And I joined Intercom about 8 years ago to start building out a machine learning function as part of Intercom's R&D. So back before kind of the current generation of AI and large language models, we were kind of building previous generation machine learning to try and like solve customer support problems. So we were using like neural networks way back before ChatGPT, and we were like building products to try and answer people's customer support questions sort of like 7-8 years ago. So yeah, we definitely got a history here, and I think that has played into to how we approach things, and has helped us move so fast now because we have sort of like a deep understanding of the problem area, even though the solutions have changed a bit. So yeah.
So when you're referring to the kind of earlier solutions, are you referring to like more like natural language understanding based solutions there?
Yeah, exactly. So we had a previous product which we called Resolution Bot, and its job was to answer customer support questions, and it was sort of powered by previous generation neural networks, natural language processing, natural language understanding. And, you know, they were starting to understand not just the words people used, but the meaning of the words, but not at the same level as the large language models we have now. So we had to do a lot of work. We had to do a lot more work to kind of make a good product that would people could set live, and then our customers had to do a lot more work to actually set the product live in order to ensure a good quality. And what's kind of really changed now is how much you get out of the box. With people who like set Fin live now very quickly, and like in their first week get amazing results, whereas previously it used to require a lot of leg work and a lot of kind of curation and teaching the bot how to answer like different questions, setting up intents. That's kind of all gone now, and we're operating at a different level. But that was the kind of thing we were doing for years. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the NLU stuff is like, it was reasonable if you got it right. I think that my observations is that there was and still is to this day, a real lack of skill and kind of experience in terms of how to train an NLU solution effectively. It's not necessarily that technology is inherently bad. It's just that when you put it in the hands of a customer who knows nothing about machine learning, nothing about natural language processing, nothing about chatbot building, and they're expected to go and deploy it, I think for many companies it was probably one step too far. I don't know if you would agree with that.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. And actually, we spent all our time and all our energy trying to build like tools and product features around that to make it easier. So like, we built this core that would kind of answer a question and would be like pretty good at answering the question if it was set up correctly and trained correctly. So, if the question might be, how do I reset my password? And you need 10 examples of people asking about how do I reset my password? And then 5 examples of them asking similar questions about passwords, but that were something different. And then once you did that and you had that set up, it would work really well and would answer customer support questions all day long. But getting it set up and then maintaining it over time was just a big barrier. And I mean, we had loads of customers who operated at that scale, and it, resolved 20% of their customer support volume, and things were great. But we also had loads of customers who bounced off it. And, we built all these features over time. We were trying to build things like, other machine learning systems that would try and suggest intents to you and would kind of like suggest your common questions and then suggest examples of things that were like similar, but not the same. And we built product features to try and make it as easy as possible to do this curation. And again, we had very successful customers, but it never really crossed that threshold to the point where it was like truly easy. It was like if you invested in it a lot, you would get an ROI. But now it's like you get an ROI on your first day, and then that sort of primes the pump. When people see that win, then they put more and more resources into it.
Mm.
I sometimes feel that like the previous generation technology just never really got sort of the shot it needed, and that there is an alternate world where, if everyone had invested more in it, people would have seen the successes more, and it would have been delivering a lot. But look, that's how it plays out. Friction getting started is always a huge part of any product experience, and I think we're in a much better world now. And then obviously the core understanding of a large language model is also way better. Like its ability to pick up on nuance and, really disambiguate questions and meanings and stuff is dramatically better than it was too. So I don't want to undersell the extent to which AI is really intelligent now, much more so than the NLU stuff in the past was.
Yeah.
So,
100%. Yeah. I mean, there are some companies that have got real value from it, but as you say, it's those that have had to really invest in it, to set up big teams, lots of big banks and like big airlines and stuff like that. Like, lots of
sure.
companies did get some value from it, but the barrier to beginning when you don't have that baseline level of skill was pretty stark. What's changed now then for Intercom, now that generative AI exists and large language models exist? How has that changed your offering?
So, we were kind of we were watching this whole space because we had a product and we'd have had tens of millions of revenue in our previous product, Resolution Bot. But we were watching the space. We were kind of acutely aware of new technology as it came out. And so we were watching things like, papers coming out of Google. And then, we had early beta relationships with OpenAI. I think we had like beta access to GPT-3 way back when. So we were kind of watching this space. And then suddenly, like everybody else, when the kind of the GPT 3.5 series models came out, it just suddenly crossed this threshold where it was good enough to do a whole lot of things in production and to work reliably. And I think we saw quite early on, we were like, you can build something here that you just kind of put your knowledge base into this, and it will just answer questions from your knowledge base. We essentially invented RAG before we were aware it was a thing, or invented it in parallel with other folks. And so, we built this version of our new product. We call it Fin, and we launched it on GPT-4 launch day, powered by GPT-4, because GPT-4 was able to get our hallucination rate down low enough that we were like, yeah, this is good enough. You can run this in production, and you can trust this in a way you just couldn't with things before. And so that's been a big product for us. We're really excited about it, and it is changing and disrupting the whole space of customer service. And so we've really since then pretty much pivoted the company. We've become an AI company, and we've really pivoted to focus on Fin. That is the future of our business. We still have a big help desk. We still have a lot of people, humans answering questions in it, and we think it's a pretty good product. But really, the future here is AI, and so we've leaned heavily into that. So yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense. How would you describe Fin then to someone who has never come across it before?
So Fin essentially is a customer support agent that will answer customer support questions, much like a human customer support representative will. People will come along, they'll open the messenger or they'll send an email, and they'll start talking to Fin. And it will talk to them much like a human customer support rep will, and it will answer their questions. And as long as the answers are contained somewhere in your knowledge base or in PDFs you put up and you to Fin, or if you've got our tasks product, as long as Fin has access to some API that can be used to solve the end user's question, Fin will do it. And things have gone from at the start where we're like, yeah, this is pretty good. This will really, this will do the job of 25% of your support team. Things have gone from that at launch to like, this is better than your tier one support. Like we have loads of examples across our customer base of like end users being like, oh, I just wanted to talk to Fin again. Sorry to bother you. I really just wanted to talk to Fin. We have a new version of Fin recently. We've been trialing and prototyping, which is Fin as an SDR, a sales development representative. And it's shocking to see how well it does in the inbox. It has encyclopedic knowledge across our product surface area in a way that like very few SDRs do. And so, this is the future. It's working really, really well. And, you still need human customer support, and you will need that for the foreseeable future. But what AI can do, what Fin can do here is kind of increasing month on month. And we build a lot of AI ourselves, and we're kind of investing a lot in this. And we've managed to get the resolution rate of Fin, the percentage of kind of questions it can resolve, up by about 1 percentage point month on month through continued investment there. And so, it's really getting pretty good at this point. It's very competitive with even pretty good human customer support reps for kind of anything that you can give it information, give it enough information to resolve. So yeah, it's pretty good at this point.
Nice. And when you say that you've increased the performance of it 1% month on month, are you referring to Fin that Intercom is using in its customer service, or are you referring to work that you're doing with others that are using the Fin capabilities for their own ends, like clients using Intercom?
Mostly the second one, but both. So essentially, that is, if you look at the on average across our entire customer base, we have thousands of businesses running Fin in production at scale. What resolution rate do they get on average? So when Fin comes and answers a question, what percentage of the time does it successfully answer that question without a human needing to come in and get involved? And that's at about 65% at the moment. And when we launched Fin originally, it was around 35%. And we have managed to get that up across all our customers by about 1 percentage point each month through just continually making the AI better, continually making better tools to kind of help Fin learn from its mistakes, to help it learn from its successes. And so, that investment has worked out really well. And we think that's a big part of why Fin is now doing so well. So many customers are choosing Fin.
That's great. What more specifically have you managed to do then to increase that performance by 1% every month?
Yeah, I mean, we could spend the entire time talking just about the answer to this question. There's a few different ways. It's a big AI investment. We decided to commit. Owen, our CEO, decided to commit about $100 million of AI investment here, a couple of years ago when this really kicked off for us. And essentially, it is the fruits of that. So there are, tens or hundreds of things where my team, the AI group, has went and they've been like, oh, the retrieval model of Finn, maybe we could replace it with this other better retrieval model. The re-ranker, the way it summarizes conversations, et cetera, et cetera. And we have gradually improved that, doing experimentation, doing A/B testing at scale, just improving the kind of the core AI of Finn to help it understand the end user's questions better and to help it find the right material to try and answer those questions. And in recent times, we've actually been investing in building out our own AI models here. So we've ended up building a custom retrieval model, a custom ranker model, custom summarizer model, a custom large language model to do summarization. We've just invested deeply in this technology and it's really working. It's really paying off. And there's an extent to which, because we have these thousands of customers running Fin in production at scale, we have this amazing surface area for Fin to learn from. So Fin today, it really is a learning system. It really is that when it answers a question and it gets the answer right, it sort of learns that that piece of content is useful for answering similar questions in future. And, the weights of the neural network are adjusted over time and it gets better and better. So Fin really, taken as a system as a whole, really is this sort of learning system now that will learn from all the answers it gives. And that's kind of why it's continuing to get better and better. And it's a deep technology investment here. We're very proud of it. And we think this is the future. And I think you're starting to see this across the industry. If you look at like companies like Cursor, the IDE for developers, they recently deployed a learning model-based model in production that learns as people kind of code in production. So I think you're going to see the bar for AI systems here to raise and raise, and they need to all become self-learning systems that learn as they go in production. So that's really what Fin is today, and that's part of what has really driven that performance.
Interesting. So you mentioned at the beginning that you have a partnership with OpenAI. You kind of launched on day one when GPT-4 was released, but then you mentioned that over time you've started to optimize the full stack with your own models. I'm assuming probably like fine-tuned models of some degree, maybe some open source models, things like that. So you've tried to essentially look at every item in the stack and every function that's being performed and tried to optimize it as best you can. Can you share a little bit about kind of like any detail on that? I don't know if this is proprietary stuff. Feel free to say no. But I mean, what is kind of like off the shelf now using GPT-4 or whatever versus like what you've had to customize for yourself and why?
I can share a lot of detail on this because we've sort of changed our internal posture in the last 6 months to where we're going to share a lot more detail because we had all this amazing technology and people sort of always assumed that our product was thin. And we were like, we don't want competitors to learn about our technology. And we realized it's much better to just tell everyone about your technology if you think you're ahead. And so that is very much what we're doing. So we can go into it in as much detail as we want, really. We have built a lot of stuff. So I should say that we still use Anthropic's LLMs. Claude seems to work the best for us in production. We still use it like deep down to answer actual questions. We have a great partnership there. We use OpenAI for our voice product as well. We have partnerships there. And, our mission is to build the best product for customer service, and we'll do whatever we can. We're partnered with whoever we need to in order to deliver the very best product. But over time, we've realized that a good way to deliver the very best product involves building our own models. And you need to do this, or else you kind of hit some accuracy limit over time. Your accuracy starts to plateau off. And so we've ended up building a lot of models ourselves. And Fin has always been 10 or 15 different large language model prompts deep down underneath the hood. And so we've sort of been doing is taking the various ones of those and replacing them piece by piece with custom models that are great at this. And so, for example, we've built a custom re-ranker model. We used to use a large language model that when Fin went and found 10 different articles that might be relevant to this question, it'd be like, well, which one should it look at first? Which one should the large language model look at first? And everyone will kind of like re-rank that content to use the large language model most effectively. And we used to use a large language model to do that re-ranking. And we have now replaced that with a custom model that we've trained ourselves in order to do that. And that really is, that particular one really is a custom model. It uses some building blocks. There's a building block called Modern BERT, which is sort of an open source NLU building block. But it's kind of got a custom objective function and it's custom trained a lot to do that. It's sort of in a blur, somewhere blurry between pre-trained and post-trained. So it's in that space. And so that's a very proprietary model. Then we have other pieces where we have fine-tuned open weight models. For example, their summarization model now is a fine-tuned version of one of Alibaba's Qwen 3 series models, one of their 16, roughly 16 or 20 billion parameter models. And we did experiments with a whole bunch of different things, really deep fine-tuning. We do a lot of fine-tuning with things like GRPO, which is like a reinforcement learning based fine tuning. And this is serious AI stuff. We run big clusters. We do a lot of work on this, and so that's been a really big investment for us. But it's paying off, and we're kind of going deeper and deeper into this space over time, because we have been surprised by the extent to which fine tuning for customer service specifically, training for customer service specifically works. And like we've done experiments, people kind of, ablation experiments and kind of leave one out experiments. We've done experiments where we will train a model that's great at customer service on some portion of signals from different customers. And then we'll check to see how it does for like different customers that aren't in the training set. And it does better at them too. So the models are learning about customer service generally. They're not just learning about the signals from any one business. And so we're really proud of that, because we think, we're building, the best AI for customer service generally. And that is very much our ambition. We want to be that when the dust settles in, 5 years' time or whatever it is, we're the company that has the best AI for customer service. And, if that means entirely our own, or if that means like still doing some partnership, we're kind of agnostic to that. Our mission and our job is to do whatever's the best AI for customer service for all our customer base.
That sounds brilliant. I'm curious about the kind of like thought process that goes into some of these decisions, because for a long time I've been kind of like very much in two minds about the whole kind of like large language model versus small language model question. Because on the one hand, large language models are getting increasingly more competent and infinitely cheaper. So on the one hand, you think, well, all problems will be able to be solved by large language models. On the other hand, you think, well, is that just a sledgehammer to crack a nut? Like, do you really need to use that? Could you use a smaller model that you could fine tune more specifically, essentially freeze it in time so it behaves the same all the time? You don't have any catastrophic forgetting and all that kind of stuff. And then you have something that's a lot cheaper, it's a lot more controllable. So it's like there's two schools of thought here. So when you were talking about Qwen and it being a 20 billion parameter model, that's definitely more towards the smaller scale as it is compared to like a GPT-4 or whatever. So like, can you walk us through your thought process in terms of like, how do you decide model size and when do you choose to fine tune versus, prompting versus RAG and stuff like that?
Absolutely. So, a year and a half ago, we had some competitors and other people in the space who were talking a lot about fine tuning models. And we were like, we're not doing any fine tuning because we just get so much out of improving the prompts over time, doing experimentation. And because the progress of the frontier large language models was just so fast, it made sense to just focus on better and better prompting. But we think the time has shifted. And so in the last sort of 6 to 12 months, we really have been, exploring doing this stuff more and more ourselves. We feel we squeezed a lot of the juice out that you would get from like ever better prompting and ever better experimentation. And the next frontier became, post-training and, building our own models. And so we've been doing that a lot. And, you can definitely look at this through the lens of small models. So several of the pieces of Fin that used to require, frontier LLMs, we have replaced either with like, models like custom architectures around encoder decoder models like Modern BERT, which are really quite small, or as you say, models that are on the smaller end, like some of the kind of 20 billion, 15, whatever, I think maybe 16 billion, something like that, whatever that Qwen 3 model is, I forget the exact parameter count. Those are on the smaller end of LLMs. And that's worked really well for us. So, you can definitely look at for example, our work on summarization. And so let me unpack that a little bit more detail. Essentially, when someone asks Finn a question, the first thing we do is we summarize that question. And the reason we do that is because sometimes people put a lot of extraneous stuff in a question. They put in like all sorts of information about themselves that's not relevant, or they have a lot of maybe greetings or a lot of like recapping on what's happened to them before that may not be relevant. And we have discovered, and we've had this for a long time in Finn's architecture. We've discovered that summarizing and canonicalizing that end user query before trying to go to RAG and retrieve the answers, we found that was worth it. But that involved this kind of expensive, high latency call to a really powerful LLM. And one of the things we discovered is we can replace that with one of these sort of mid-sized Quen models with a lot of fine tuning to make it great at that task of summarization. And we've done that, and it improves our latency and it improves our performance. And that's been wonderful. And you can look at that as an example of the sort of, you can say, hey, this is an example of small language models of us taking a system that has LLMs and gradually replacing it. And it's like, your part of your question was like, when does it make sense to do this? And there's definitely judgment there, and there's definitely risk there, because you can invest a lot of time building a custom piece of architecture here, and then the ground could shift underneath you. It could be the case that some LLM with maybe prompt caching or with like some new technology suddenly gets 10 times faster and cheaper, and you're like, oh, maybe it wasn't worth doing this. So we're kind of looking for things where the technology has converged and stabilized a good degree, and where we think that we're probably going to durably need this part of our solution in future. So another example that we invested in was our re-ranker and our retrieval models. And like, we're pretty sure you're going to need retrieval models in front of the heavier LLMs for the foreseeable future. And there was all this stuff maybe about a year ago. People started producing models with like very long contexts. People were like, RAG is dead. Just put everything in your model context. And like, put 1 million tokens in there. And then you end up with like these really expensive, high latency calls. And, it's just not worth it. It's a less good system. So we do think that the broad architecture of RAG and retrieval is probably here for a while. But we'll see. Things change all the time. Prompt caching has been a big change recently. And so, this is this fast moving space. You have to keep evolving your architecture. But even in the extreme situation where specific models that we've invested in become no longer valuable, the process of building and investing and like fine tuning really great models to make them excellent customer support service, we really think that will be durable. We think that you need to compete at the AI layer in order to offer durable value to people. And we think that like almost for the foreseeable future, even if models get a lot better, there will be edge to be gained and differentiated value to be provided by taking those better models and specializing them for customer service. And that is our bet. Everything is a portfolio of bets across an uncertain future. That's the right way to do it. You don't want to be all in on any one potential future because the world is very uncertain. Everyone's investing a lot in super intelligence these days, and the world's changing. So it's definitely, you need a portfolio approach, and you need to kind of face the uncertainty head on and structure your investments accordingly. That's very much what I believe, and kind of how we do things here.
That's really good. I mean, I think that fundamentally, one thing that's not going to change is that customers are not going to stop having issues, and they're not going to stop asking questions. And therefore, the ability to be able to respond to them at scale is something that's not going away. It's just a question of whether or not the way that you approach it today is good enough for you to say, well, we're happy with that, let's solve a different problem, or whether that particular element needs to be constantly reworked and stuff,
I mean, at the risk of being contrary or something, in this space, you can come up with an alternate hypothesis for almost anything. And one thing we think about is, hey, is there a potential future where customers do in fact stop asking questions because their AI agents on their phone are like proactively solving their issues? And you're trying to talk to an AI agent from a phone rather than an actual end user. And like, is there a way we get intermediated in that way? So there there are many possible futures you can for any like definite assumption that you can build your whole business on. There's like a way it might not hold, and so I think we're just in an uncertain future, and but also you can talk yourself out of delivering massive value, by thinking about something that is, 3 steps down the road, and when something is 3 steps down the road, you'll convince yourself that like, oh, our business is definitely going to get disrupted by X, and then like the landscape shifts in a completely different way that you didn't expect. And so yeah, I think you have to be reactive. You have to keep your options open. You have to have a portfolio of bets, and there's enormous alpha in trying to make educated guesses about the future.
Yeah.
But there's very little you can count on for certain. That's at least our experience.
I would agree. Things change very, very quickly. I think you've covered very well there in terms of the Intercom approach to retrieval augmented generation. One of my kind of issues, I've called it the full stop problem, which is that a lot of companies that begin with RAG tend to like almost stop at RAG, whereas retrieval augmented generation to answer a customer's question is great if that question is the end point of a journey. But typically, questions are asked either during the process or during a broader journey, or maybe even at the beginning of a journey that leads into doing something. So when you move from RAG, which does a good job at that kind of like high level, understand everything, answer questions, and you start to move more into the kind of like transactional stuff, like getting stuff done. This is something, again, that was always possible with NLU and NLP and stuff like that, but it's become a lot higher on people's agenda, given that now the ability for large language models to be able to affect this more greatly. And that brings us to the concept of agentic AI. So what is Intercom's approach to agentic AI?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say that like, we have had products for like 6 years here that we're able to like take actions in order to resolve end user challenges in response to a customer support conversation. We built all this low code stuff, and so we have a lot of experience with integrating with external systems here. And I would say, much like the informational queries, what's really new here is the relative ease of getting these things live. So in that previous generation, if you had a customer support query that, you needed to tread through 3 or 4 different API systems in order to resolve the query, it was very hard to do. Basically, no one was getting that set up. Whereas now, we have a procedures product, a tasks product. People are doing this all the time, and it's pretty wild. And you can set up tasks where someone comes along and they ask a question. Maybe it's a complicated refund question, and Finn is able to go and disambiguate, oh, is it about this order or that order? And it's able to go and like take the user, look the user up, look up the order system, find the specific order, check the order status, and then reason and be like, oh, the user is asking about this, but I can see that the order hasn't dispatched yet. So the user probably wants to know this. And I'll be like, yeah, it's coming in 2 days. Do you still want to refund it? And like that stuff all just works now in a way that it didn't before. And like Finn will plan and tread through 3 or 4 different systems in order to answer an end user question. And that stuff's live. It's in production. It works. Customers do incredibly sophisticated things with it. And that is very exciting. And I definitely think that has flipped really in the last 6 months. 9, 12 months ago, it was like a buying criterion for a lot of customers. And then, they would buy the product, and then they would really struggle to actually get the agentic stuff live. They struggled to like get it through their security review. It was kind of new. And then like their internal APIs, they weren't quite ready. They didn't have the right like authentication or the right APIs, or the people in customer service or deploying AI couldn't get access to those. And like quite suddenly, that's now sort of flipping. And it requires a lot of work from us too. Like we have to go and partner with the customer to help them do this. But yeah, that space seems to be opening up very rapidly. I think MCP is a part of that too. We were sort of a very early adopter of MCP when we saw it coming. It's only part of it, but it is a part of it too. I think people's expectations of what their AI is able to do is changing very rapidly. And I've actually, like, firstly, RAG in informational queries, it's not a commodity. Everyone thinks it's a commodity, and like we frequently see factor of two differences in terms of the performance of one system or another. And like for a long time, I was like, no, we need to keep investing in RAG, and we'll experiment with the procedures stuff. And now, quite recently, the procedure stuff is really starting to work. We're really starting to see customers having success with it. So yeah, it's a very exciting time. You sometimes see Finn do things, and it feels like science fiction. You can see it like accessing two or three APIs, reasoning through what it should do next, and taking the right action. And of course, like uh, we've built all this product tooling where someone has to kind of like tell it roughly what to do. Like it can't just go and start doing refunds. Someone has to tell it about the refund policy first. But you literally will see things where it's like, oh, based on all this information that I've now fetched about the user and, section 3 of the refund policy, I think this is a good refund. So I'm going to do the refund, and then I'm going to wait, and it does the refund, and it waits. And then it's like, hey, end user, your refund has been done. Like, that's live. That works. We have customers doing that stuff at scale. We even have customers starting to do that over voice. We have Fin Voice, Fin for Phone, where we have customers with big call centers. People are like calling up on their telephones. They're talking to Fin. And, we have customers now who have like Fin doing tasks live in production. And that's very exciting stuff, where someone calls up, they talk to Fin, and Fin will like issue a refund for them. It's feels like the future.
Definitely, that's really good. And I'm assuming your approach is similar to others, whereby you have like an orchestrator agent that essentially handles the query, figures out which sub-agent to devolve it to. Those sub-agents have basically like tasks described, processes described, tools that they have access to, and essentially it's a case of the orchestrator chooses which agent should be best to do whichever the procedure is or whatever the task is, and then through providing it, this tool's for that, this tool's for this, here's how you should go through the task, and this is what the process is. It then uses its, I think we could probably call it reasoning. It's more a case of it really kind of following instructions and using its, I suppose, initiative in inverted commas to figure out when has it got what it needs to from one tool to move to the next tool, when has it completed the task. Like, is that generally how it's set up and how it manifests?
Yeah, I think that's a fair description on a high level, and I'm quite comfortable to call it reasoning at this point. I think
Yeah.
LLMs, if you're using like big LLMs, I think they're reasoning, and I think we see it, doing plenty adequate reasoning for the domains in which it operates, and yeah, and that's kind of how it works at a high level, yeah, and I would say that like something that sort of defines us maybe as compared to other folks in this space is, we're a product company, and we're like productizing everything as we go. And so we do a certain amount of like custom work to help customers get set up. We have a services team that does that. But we're really trying to build a core product here with like a standardized core that will like learn over time. And I would say that like that means that we have to be more deliberate in terms of the design of, you kind of mentioned that orchestration layer. Like our solution will be like more opinionated than some other folks. Like we have competitors who I believe will go and they'll like send a forward deployed engineer and like customize that for the individual business and like write a custom orchestrator and like write custom prompts. And like that sounds pretty good. You'll get set up really, really quickly. But then it won't get better over time. You won't get updates. It's hard to update it yourself. So I definitely think we have an opinionated difference that does live at that level, which is that like we're very much building a standardized product envelope. That sort of like outer layer, as you talk about it, is standardized for us. Whereas I think a lot of other companies operating in this space, they really are customizing that per company, which sounds great. Definitely gets you out of the gate pretty well at the start with forward deployed engineers. But then you have a maintenance issue and a product debt issue, and the product doesn't improve over time. So we are now, look, we're thinking about whether we should move to like more and more of a model like that over time. But again, we really like having a standardized product that gets better over time. And that's worked really well for informational fin. That's why it's twice as good now as it was at launch. And so I think to get technical, that's a difference there between, what we do and kind of how other folks approach it.
Yeah, I can understand I can understand the logic there, definitely. Maybe you could help me kind of understand a bit about how that standardization and opinionated approach kind of manifests itself. Like, let's say, for example, let's say I think we've used the retail example a few times. Let's say I'm a retailer. I'm interested in using the agentic AI capabilities at Intercom. How do I go about getting set up, and what's that experience like for me?
So I actually think maybe if we start off by addressing this in the context of the informational queries, because if you're okay with that, that's just it's just easier in the context of the informational queries to kind of explain this.
Okay.
So, when we're doing informational queries with people, we always got like questions and product features around like, I want to customize the prompt to have it reflect my tone of voice, or I want to customize the prompt to like have it make the answers to questions shorter. And, we had internal debates where we're like, hey, maybe we should like open up the core prompts of Fin to our customers and allow them to just edit the prompt in those ways. And we were always nervous that like once we did that, we would be through a one-way door, and then the prompts would start to diverge. And we'd have like, when we have about 5,000 different customers, we'll have like 3,000 different prompts. And the problem with that is it's very difficult to then test and and move in a standardized way, because we get so much benefit because we can be like, well, maybe we should write the prompt like that. Let's do an A/B test, and we'll do an A/B test over thousands of customers. And we're like, yeah, that new way is 0.5 percentage points better. Or alternatively, no, it's 0.5 percentage points worse. And we've done literally probably like 500 A/B tests like this, and it adds up over time. And so we didn't want to have our product completely diverge in that way at the prompt level. We thought that was like the wrong way to build a product. And that was a pretty contrarian take, even internally in the company. I really kind of pushed for that. And people were kind of saying, we need to just give our customers the ability to do what they want. And I was always like, no, we need to give them the ability to do what they want, but without breaking sort of the standardized product envelope. And how we solved that in the end was kind of like after the prompt. So it's like, we were like, okay, so what do customers want to do? What are the top 10 things they want to do? And it's like, they want to edit the tone of voice. They want to edit the length of responses. We were like, well, we know that everyone prefers shorter responses. All our customers want shorter responses, but longer responses answer questions better. They have higher resolution rates. We're like, okay, we're going to build this as an option in the UI. We're going to clearly signpost this to our customers so that if they want to override the trade-off, they can, but at least we'll be able to tell them it quite explicitly. And that's sort of how we built the configuration layer. We really built a product-based configuration layer where, if someone wanted to change the tone of voice, we gave them like 10 options for the tone of voice. And that was almost always enough for people. And then if people wanted to give very free-form guidance afterwards, we built this new feature called guidance, where, there was a constrained place in the UI where they could edit these prompts. And then we even built machinery. We saw customers sometimes, make guidance that would break the product or damage the product. And we built like another prompt that would check the customer's guidance and let them know when they had like conflicting guidance or when they had wrote guidance that didn't make sense. And so again, productization, mass production, standardization is very much where you want to be here. And there's a similar thing to that playing out over in the agentic world and in the world of, taking actions. But it's a lot more complex because that whole space is a lot more complex. But essentially do something similar. And we were happy with where we ended up with the trade-off we made with informational. Customers were able to get the control they wanted, while it's still being a pretty standardized envelope, which enabled us to like make it better and better and better very rapidly over time. We're trying to achieve something similar in procedures. And, the procedures that are tasks world is more complicated. I think we're on version 4 of sort of our UI and our UIX there. So like it is definitely a tricky space. And I think we are navigating the space with our customers and we're learning about it in partnership as we go. But I'm pretty happy that we are going to end up with something there that is both, standardized, productized, and will improve over time for our customers, but also will give them sufficient control to kind of do what they need. And again, a lot of our competitors, I think, are in this world of like, we'll send you a forward deployed engineer, again, which sounds great, but you'll end up with a very custom solution, which again sounds great, but then it won't get better over time. Like, you want any product you buy, you want it to be like as custom as you need it to achieve your business goal, and then like not custom beyond that, because you don't want to have to do the lift yourself to get, like, as the technology gets better and better. You want the standardized bits to just improve as the technology gets better over time.
Yeah.
That's our philosophy.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think definitely on the information side, I can see that kind of being an easier problem to crack. Not that it's an easy problem to crack, but an easier one to crack. But I think on the process side, the challenge, I mean, I did a lot of work in government in the past, in previous years, and you would take 20 government organisations, put them all together, and ask them to describe a process as simple as applying for a planning application or for a parking permit or for an extension application or whatever it might be. And they all do the exact same thing. Same thing with every single retailer. You all do the exact same thing. You sell stuff, you ship stuff, you refund stuff, you find stuff. It's all the same stuff. It's just that when it comes to the process level, one company has a policy that has to have this in place. Another company has a policy that has to have that in place. And one company uses this system that has an API, and the other one uses that system that's a homegrown tool. And it kind of, all of a sudden, something that should be very straightforward starts to diverge pretty quickly. Then you couple that with the absence of skills at the client level, like, it'd be great for you to be able to just have a solution which is just, hey, just stick the main bits in here and that's it, done. It's just from other tools that I've seen, I haven't seen Intercoms in any great detail, but I've seen a lot of what you probably would call competitors, and they're all approaching it in a very kind of similar way. And for me, it's a standardization in terms of the fields that you need to fill in, basically, to bring something to life. But what goes in there is still very specific, and therefore the performance is ultimately determined by how good at writing prompts the client is.
Yeah. And, again, when I used to study computer science, people used to talk about like, separating mechanism and policy. And I think, so it's like the mechanistic layer that you use to achieve the policy, to deliver the actual goods. You kind of want to be standardized, but you want people to have the different policy requirements. You want that to be configurable. And I think that modern AI really collides the two in a very deep way that I think a lot of people haven't realized yet, which is that like, you're all just like writing prompts in English. Everything's so easy. And it's like, well, actually, you no longer have any separation between your mechanism and your policy when you let people just go and write prompts like that. And again, you'll get live very, very fast, but then you have this like maintenance burden and maintenance nightmare. And we really believe that what we're trying to do here is build products that separate these two things out. So yes, there's going to be almost as many different policy layers and policy requirements as there are different businesses. But you want the interface to your AI product that enables people to like capture the different policies. You want it to like just be consuming the policies. You don't accidentally want them to be like programming mechanism in there too. And like, I think that is the anti-pattern that lies at the heart of everyone going and like deploying forward deployed engineers everywhere, right? Like, why do you need forward deployed engineers to set up your product? Well, it's because they're doing both mechanism and policy work at the same time. And again, that sounds great, but we have been doing engineering and software engineering for a long time. And you do not want your mechanism and your policy layers all interleaved in a complicated spaghetti way. Yes, you will get live very, very fast, but you will not be able to maintain that over time. You want things to be broken out. And so that is what we are doing. We are trying to design our products in a way that will have the mechanistic layer of using the AI and the LLMs contained in the product, and then with a clearly defined policy place for people to go and put everything that is specific to their business. And, and the things that are specific to their business can be like, very complex flows of logic. So like fuzzy business logic, right? There's a whole new fuzzy business logic layer emerging as well. And so like it's not that like it's just some fields and it's just some values. No, no, no. It's complex logic and reasoning rationale. But like you want that to be as separate as possible from the core product pieces of how the agent works, of what it does. And you really need to have these things separate as well in order that someone who isn't an engineer, a prompt engineer, can actually go and make the product work. And again, we see a lot of other people are approaching this by very diverged products with forward deployed engineers everywhere. It's not the way we're going. We're opinionated about that. I'm kind of pushing that a lot. And I think that our approach will give dividends over time, as it has done for the informational queries as well.
I love that. Yeah, it's almost like the logic. It makes perfect sense. It's almost the separation between form and function, isn't it? You want to standardize the function, and the form it takes is open to interpretation. That's a great way of putting it. I think that what all of this presents is, both from your side, and I'm interested in from your side and also from the client side, which is on your side, whether we're talking about the information retrieval or whether we're talking about procedural automation, there has to be a good amount of testing done so that whether you're putting stuff into the hands of clients that's working and good. From the client side, there needs to be a certain amount of testing done because they need to know that the customers are getting the right answers and processes are being automated successfully and stuff like that. So how do you approach those two concerns?
I think you're absolutely right. That's very much how we see it. And there are two separate sets of concerns there. And we approach them in different ways. So firstly, my group does enormous amount of testing on everything. We have like back tests and evals and simulation tests and all this stuff that we use. But also separately, a customer actually putting the product live also needs to do a lot of testing. And we have a whole work stream dedicated to that sort of that product feature of like, how do you test and evaluate and verify that it works? And so we're investing here, and we're investing more and more here over time. So yeah, we built product features around this where you can kind of you can do simple evals in the product where you can have like 10 sample questions or 10 sample scenarios, and make a change to the configuration of Fin and then rerun and check to see how it does in those 10 sample things. Does it do what you want? We have built that as product features at the moment, but we're investing ever deeper in here because we think this is a big area for people, especially larger companies, very much need to see, how can I be sure, like, they may have compliance, they may have regulatory things. They need to make sure that it never does X in this situation. And so we're investing pretty deeply in another product surface area there. Yeah.
And from your side, like, it's almost like, again, you've got a kind of testing happening at different stages of the product. From presumably, obviously, you've got a lot of testing going on from the stuff that we spoke about earlier, which is the retrieval, the re-ranking, and all that kind of stuff. There must be some good sort of testing going on there. But then also, you're surfacing stuff on the front end that when the user makes a change, presumably, correct me if I'm wrong, but how I've seen it happen in other platforms is that whatever changes I make on the front end in the UI, ultimately that is feeding an instruction into a prompt, because the front end of the UI can essentially affect the program. So, for example, when you were saying there about tone of voice selection, short answers or long answers, etc., the decisions I'm making on the front end are then changing the nature of the prompt behind the scenes. And so you've got prompt testing to be done. You've then got kind of like retrieval testing to be done, re-ranking testing to be done, accuracy kind of in terms of your responses to be done, all that kind of stuff. Like how do you know what good looks like when you've got so much work to do and so much testing to do? How do you define what good looks like?
So, we generally define what good looks like in terms of like actual end user metrics. So, has this change increased the resolution rate? That's really our North Star that we look at. Are more end users getting their their problems successfully solved by Fin without needing to escalate to a human. And, we bill based on that. We bill based on a resolution. And so, our incentives are very aligned. And I think that's one thing that's really nice about working in this space. It's like, we are aligned and get more revenue when we help end users more, we answer their questions. And, that provides business value to our customers. Our customers get happy end users. And so, that's the big North Star. That's the big thing we're always trying to improve. We're always trying to make the product deliver more value by doing more and more resolution. And so that is the metric. That's the primary metric that we use in all our A/B tests. We tend to look at like hard resolution and soft resolution, which is what we internally call a hard resolution is when an end user has like affirmatively said, yes, that's helped me, thank you. And a soft resolution is where like they haven't escalated to a human. And, we tend to look at those in combination. We want to see them both move up. We need to make sure we don't ever build a deflection machine here. We're trying to build something that will positively, successfully answer end user questions. So those are the two metrics. And everything is analyzed in terms of those. Now, they're not the only two metrics. We look at other things like, engagement and successful completion and all these sort of things. But those are the two primary metrics that we evaluate everything to. And so literally everything, like any change to our re-ranker will be A/B tested at scale. Hundreds of thousands, typically, sometimes millions of end user interactions are necessary to get the statistical power we want to actually run like a real A/B testing program and not a theater A/B testing program, which happens a lot in the world. So we run a lot of statistically overpowered tests. If we consider one LLM change to another, again, pretty common to have like 1 million end user interactions in that. So that's the sort of scale that we operate at. And then, that's kind of like, that's kind of the North Star that we really set out to do all the way up and down. And then, if there's some small sub part of the product, maybe there'll be some other particular metric that you care about more. Like for, you might be, if we're trying to instead have a product team improve the UI or the UX of a product, they'll look at some like completion metrics or task completion metrics. And again, you asked this question around like, okay, so users can go and they can edit the prompts, and then that affects that stuff as well. And again, we try and design our products quite carefully so that the kind of changes that people make to edit the prompts are constrained. So let's say that you want to change the tone of voice of Fin. We would much rather give you a dialogue with the top 6 or 10 different tones of voice that everybody is asking for and have you choose one of those, because we can then go and measure and check, then make sure that none of those break any of the surrounding prompts. We'd much rather you do that than just say, here you go, here's a tone of voice prompt, put the thing in. And because that enables us to kind of run that testing program and to be able to say, oh, this worked well for people in the formal tone of voice, but the shorter answers didn't work well for people with the informal tone of voice. And, keeping the product structured in that way helps us improve it. But there has to be a negotiation here. You can't be totally purist about things. And we do have options where customers are allowed to enter things that, effectively are prompts. But again, even in that case, I would say conceptually, like you want them to run kind of towards the end of the system, right? So like if it's a RAG answer, you sort of want like your retrieval and your re-ranker and your shortlist questions really to be running first. And then any prompts that the user has to kind of like change or finesse the answer, you kind of want to happen at the end in order that you can keep the standardized stuff in your control so that you can, improve those over time. And some similar ideas cut across our entire product suite, basically.
Yeah. That's really good. I mean, some providers that you'll come across will obviously just have little boxes and windows where you can just insert your own kind of like natural language that would affect the prompt, and others at the same time totally remove anything like that. And I think the concern I've always had is that, like, one, for those that let you type into a box for whatever feature it might be, guardrails or grounding or whatever, it's almost impossible to test the efficacy of that, because they don't often come without the box tools that will test, if I change this one particular part, what impact it's going to have. At the same time, those that completely abstract everything and just stick it behind the scenes in the black box, it's like, how much work are they doing to really make sure that, for example, the guardrails work effectively, that the retrieval is really going well? So it's encouraging to hear you kind of talk about the level of detail you're going through to make sure that what you put out there is being judged by what is it impactful, basically? Is it actually having an impact?
Absolutely. And, we agonize about this at Intercom, building Fin, because, you know, we have very strong like product company DNA. And so we have customers who are self-serve. We've maybe like about over 5,000 customers of Fin, I believe. And, loads of them are self-serve. Loads of them are not getting sort of a sales engagement and a service engagement. Some of them are, most of the bigger ones are, but loads of the smaller ones aren't. And the product still needs to work and deliver really great value for those folks. And so we really approach this through the lens of productization to enable those self-serve customers to also be very successful. And that means we have to do this. It means we have to take on the burden of doing this. And our thesis is that this will help us build a better product for everybody, for our biggest customers too, over time. And that has absolutely played out with informational queries. We have, in all our testing, we have the highest performing engine that does informational queries. And we've got there because of this standardization that has then enabled us to test it over time. And of course, we're billing based on resolutions too. So we're incentivized to kind of to improve it over time. And yeah, this has been our bet. And, it would be, we hope that as the industry matures, this becomes the standard pattern that everyone realizes, yes, this is the right way to build a product. This is what you need to. Don't be customizing your prompts for every individual customer if you can avoid it. Don't, because that is fragmenting your product surface area. Instead, that the best products are going to be the ones that are standardized and tested and optimized in this way. And if I had to choose only one of the two scenarios you outlined, I would choose the one where you aren't exposing all the prompts everywhere to customers for this reason. But I think in practice, people need the control. And so this is this negotiated balance. And I think the art of AI product development in the world at the moment is about negotiating this balance. It's like whenever I see someone advertise that they have a model switcher where, they have a deep AI product and you can just, if you don't like the model we use, just switch to a different model. I'm always like, oh no, like that's got to be killing your quality. And so, yeah, I think, you got to be a bit opinionated. You got to give people the tools they need, but you got to be as opinionated as you can so that you can be standardized, so you can improve the product and make it better.
Nice. You mentioned it a few times. I want to make sure that I understand this correctly. Intercom will charge a client for successful AI conversations. Is that the commercial model?
Yeah, that is the commercial model. I think we're an early pioneer. I think we're the first people in our space to really do outcome-based pricing with these LLMs. And we needed to do this because their costs are so high. And so then the question was, well, do we bill per conversation they get involved in? Or do we bill per successful outcome, per resolution? And we decided to bill per successful outcome. And really the rationale for that is that it needed to be an expensive cost in order to kind of cover the costs of these LLMs. Because, when we went out of the gate, we were losing money at $1 per resolution because we were running GPT-4 at scale on dedicated hardware, and it was expensive. And so we needed to be, a pretty hefty price of $1 per resolution, or like, whatever it was, some equivalent per conversation. And we kind of decided that it would be more palatable to charge per successful unit of work, because then people would compare it to a human successful unit of work and it would keep the incentives aligned. And that was palatable to people. People were like, oh, it cost me $10 or $20 to successfully resolve a conversation with a human customer support rep. A dollar sounds like a lot for a piece of software, but it's actually an extremely small amount for the valuable work that I am getting here. So we really wanted to position things in terms of like, yeah, you're paying for this valuable work. And again, people were very skeptical when we started. And so it was like, hey, we're only going to bill when the end user hasn't escalated to the human. They were like, okay, yeah, I get that. That makes sense. And so all those reasons and others, it helped us align us internally. I was always very bullish on it in terms of it would align the sales and the go-to-market and the R&D units in Intercom, all chasing this like customer value. I've previously worked with PMs in the past who care a lot about like sort of incentive alignment. I think Google PMs have a lot of that DNA in them. And so I was really bullish on it for all those reasons. And Dara, our CTO, really drove that and did what was a pretty risky thing in the world at that time. Yeah, outcome-based pricing.
Yeah,
Now it's become standard.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. What are some of the things or anything that you can share in terms of what you're excited about right now? Could be something that either you're working on, or it could be something just generally in the AI space that is firing you up at the minute.
Yeah, I'm excited about a lot of things, and it's an extremely exciting space. It's too exciting. There's like too many sleepless nights trying to integrate the new information about how the world has changed and like what this means. And there's a bit of that going on at the moment. But I'm very excited about our work internally. We're going ever deeper into the AI layer. We've gotten really good results from like post-training our models. We're doing like big training runs with sophisticated RL based post training methods, and it's really enabling us to take models and really make them great at what we're doing. Very excited about that. Excited to continue doing that. Other investments in that space. And then also, I'm really excited by the continuing improvement of AI out there across the industry. There's new techniques coming out. Mixture of experts models are getting more and more powerful. People are like discovering different architectures there, different like training objectives and loss functions. It's just such an exciting time. There's new things coming out all the time. Uh, new and better hardware we're getting access to, and it's a really exciting time in this space. A little bit like terrified by how uncertain the space is when you project 2 or 3 years out. Got like memos from people like Mark Zuckerberg talking about if super intelligence arrives in 3 years as opposed to 5 years, they need to be early. And you look at that and you're like, a pretty big AI applications company. And we're like, so how does that affect our business? And it's like, hey, I think we need to talk more about this. And and it's just the pace of change goes up and down. It was kind of going crazy for a while, and then it was like scaling pre-training seemed to kind of fall or like asymptote out. Like GPT, what they call GPT 4.5, wasn't like, it was cool, but wasn't like this big step forward. And now it feels like things are accelerating again, and everyone's got their capex going again. People are building data sets. Oh, here we go. Reinforcement learning based scaling. So yeah, it's a very exciting, wild, crazy space in technology. It's pretty amazing to get to be in technology at this time, and just who knows what's going to happen next. And in one way, it's like it's daunting because things are just changing so fast. There's no like ground to stand on. But on the other hand, it's like this is the most exciting times when there's no ground to stand on. All those, and also it's like, oh, we can't set a product strategy that like is valid for more than 6 months. And it's like, it's an amazing time in technology. No one can set product strategies that are valid for 6 months. This is what we're good at. We're good at like fast R&D. Hey, everyone, this is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. We're good at this stuff. This is the game we want. And so constant cultural orientation. Oh, it's a wild time, but it's fun. It's like the early days of the internet all over again, times 10. So
absolutely. Absolutely. But I think, for a company like Intercom, who, it's got the funds to dedicate to it, to have that, say we're going to dedicate these funds to it, and we don't necessarily know exactly what we're going to do, but we're going to take a step at a time. We're going to learn, we're going to keep going, and we're going to keep going, and we're going to shift wherever we need to shift based on what's changing. But that's where we're going to go. And I think that even though you're a product company, there's lessons in there for businesses in general. All of your clients and all of your prospects and any business out there that's looking at leveraging AI. I think you've got to take that approach, which is AI is not going anywhere. Absolutely not. Yeah. You don't necessarily know what you're going to end up with, but you have to go on the journey.
Yeah. I think Intercom has got some good DNA here that like sometimes has been a big pain running AI inside Intercom, and then other times it's been wonderful. And so I remember when I joined Intercom always had this like really fast, ship to production really fast mentality. This sort of culture that, like, if you had a big project, you should always break it down into like 10 small projects that you can deliver incrementally, really, really fast, lock in value and move on. And like the whole rhythm of the company was like that. I remember being genuinely nervous joining Intercom and like ended up, reporting to the CTO in a different kind of more special project style org structure because I was nervous that, the fast pace that and the incremental focus could break, machine learning or AI culture. And like there's ways in which there's been tension there, and because AI, you need to invest in much more random weird stuff, like in stuff that will like you can't justify ahead of time, and it like feels like very much like a thesis bet. It's very difficult for people outside the core team to tell whether this is like a crazy idea or like going to be a game changing idea, and so there needs to be a lot of trust. But the flip side of all of that is that if you have a new idea and if you can ship it quickly and gain value quickly, people will reorient around that. And so I think that has served us well when the external space is changing so fast. The fact that the whole company is this like fast shipping machine. Dara, our CTO, has always had an article, shipping is your heartbeat. Like they say, like shipping is your company's heartbeat. That's actually served us well in such a dynamic space because it has enabled us to like ship very quickly and check and see how things are going. And the company is willing to like course correct around that. When the ChatGPT came out and we shipped our first AI features, I was very much championing those, and there was a lot of skepticism. And then we shipped them in like weeks, literally in about 3 weeks or something after ChatGPT came out. We had our first features live. And we could see the metrics of those, and then that could be used to dispel a lot of criticism or a lot of skepticism internally. The company is used to course correcting like that. So it's like, it's actually quite a resilient machine in the face of external change. And so I would say to everybody else in this space, I'd be like, yeah, you have to kind of think long term and make long term over the horizon investments. But the way to do it is with a machine that like ships and moves very fast and is very dynamic, be very flexible. That is something that sort of like, I don't know, metacultural level or something has worked really well for Intercom and enabled us to move fast through this space. So yeah.
Nice. Well, Dara, sorry, Fergal. I was saying Dara because you keep saying Dara. Just
Dara, yeah, Dara's CTO. Yeah,
Fergal, I really, really appreciate your time. This has been absolutely fantastic. Really, really, appreciate the perspectives that you've brought there. For coming into it, I was thinking, I didn't really know a great deal about Intercom's AI capabilities, but I kind of had some preconceived notions about what I thought it would be. And quite honestly, I thought coming into it, it would be a little bit like, we're just this black box and trust us, it works. But I think after this conversation, you've really helped open my eyes to that's not the case whatsoever, actually. Everything you're doing is very methodical, very diligent. You're optimizing for the right reasons. You're taking the time to build out your own capabilities where it makes sense, and you're really focused on the end customer. So it's been a really, really enlightening conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, look, Kane, thanks a million for the deep questions. It's great to be able to engage and talk about it at this level. And yeah, we have put an awful lot of work into building a great product here. And I think it's working for us in the market. We've got over $50 million of ARR. And, a lot of that is from customers that have gone and have tested it head to head against other competitors. And, I think we've won a whole bunch of those A/B tests in a row now. We're really excited about that, and so yeah, we believe very deeply in building a great product here, and the best product we can. And we think to do that, you need to invest very deeply in this. And so very, very glad we get to do this. Glad we get to build something that's useful and delivers value to our customers, and we're going to keep working on it. Yeah.
Wicked. Appreciate it. Maybe we can do this again sometime when we're a little bit further down the road, perhaps.
Absolutely. I'd love to do that. Yeah.
Nice one. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Fergal. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for tuning in. Until the next one. See you soon. Bye now.